Okay. Hello, so this is Parker, Henry, and Brant's Info 3430 project on a healthcare data warehouse system. So our project overview, the goal of the project is to create a healthcare data warehouse that stores key hospital data like patient info, doctor's details, appointments, the procedures, and the payments that tied to the appointments. This organized system will help healthcare staff analyze trends, track performance, and make informed decisions. It can also help reduce duplicate data. It improves reporting and supports long-term planning.
Next slide.
Yep, next. To start out, we have our base tables that involve the patients, doctors, their payments, the appointments, and the procedures. As you can see in the example, it kind of goes over some of the basic information that would go into each table. The purpose is to store the raw based data from the patients, doctors, and procedures. This and track appointments associated with the doctors and all the procedures. Next. Here's our star schema, as we see in the first image under the healthcare database. Starts out with the patients in which they'll make an appointment, buying it, creating an appointment ID, and this appointment ID is tied to the procedures, and the procedure tied to the doctors that are taking care of the procedures. The patient's information is more basic, that would pertain to what might be needed for the patient's care. And as you can see with the doctors, it's more basic on just who they are and how we can contact them. And then at the bottom, we see that obviously we need to be able to pay for the appointment, so that is tied directly to the appointment ID. And yeah, next.
Awesome. So I'm going to take this one. So this is our sample data testing, where we really wanted to validate the data warehousing as well as the tables, that they were functioning correctly. You'll see on the left hand side that there's we're inserting values into each of the different tables that we've explained just recently that Parker did a great job doing. And in the right image there, you'll be able to see that we were then able to produce an output that then used all of those values to then had them inserted there to make sure everything was functioning correctly. And since it was, we were then able to press forward with our project and validate some of the other features and functionality that we have here. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, and the next slide is our fact appointment table, and this is really core to what we're trying to do to our project here. And what this is allowing us to do, it's allowing us to track across all of the tables more data that is specifically pointing to, with the appointment ID being the primary key, we want to make sure that that's being tied to the correct patient, to the correct doctor, to the correct procedure. Because one of the things we wanted to make sure that wasn't getting confused is if a patient had multiple different types of procedures or multiple different type of doctors within the same hospital, we want to make sure that we're not confusing that data with one another. And this really is the guts of what we're trying to do here. And another point that we wanted to make sure was pointed out is this allows for granularity on a per patient basis of what did they do, what did they pay. It can even tie back to particular doctors, right? And what procedures have they done, and on what patients, and if there's whether there's issues with that doctor and the way they do things, or maybe there was a payment issue, or just tracking in general. Really wanted to make sure that we're able to create conclusions based off of the data that is being generated and entered into the system, because without the ability to then track all of the data that we have and put it into places that make sense, this project would be for naught. So we want to make sure that we have the ability to track and to maintain and create operational efficiencies from what we're seeing here. And then that takes us right into the fact monthly revenue table, which Henry's going to take for us.
All right, sweet. Taking over here, and this is basically the sort of the business analysis side. We need to keep this hospital, keep on keeping on, allow the doctors to do what they're best at, saving lives. And as you can see here in our code, this is sort of the back end where we're tracking, aggregating the revenue for each doctor, which we're not implicating any sort of like the hospitals is just doing it for profit. It's just mainly just on the business side here to just keep the lights on and ensure that we have like a detailed look on how revenue is going and by year, month. And yeah, that should cover it for this slide. And then moving on to stored procedures and ETL flow. As you can see here on the left-hand side, I made a sort of a flow chart on how basically the healthcare database is accepting all the raw data and the stored procedures is just loading all that data into the healthcare data warehouse. Essentially just making sure every data that's flowing in is just efficient and ensure that no like duplicates or just sort of any redundancies in the database is happening. Yeah, we can activate this through like SQL commands automatically to gain that operational efficiency. Alrighty, so moving on to the join query outputs. As required from the final project here, we needed like a multi dimensions like table calling every single data available. So for example, for patients, we not only just need their name, we need like the gender, date of birth, phone, emails, address, as well as, their associate doctor, specialty, and everything else that's linked to the patient. Yeah, basically this is just like a complete 360 look on every single data. Yeah, it's just helpful in sort of data analytics available to anyone really involved here, the patients, the doctors, and yeah.
Great. So what did we learn? What are the conclusions that we're able to draw from this? We really wanted to show three very particular conclusions that we've made from doing this exercise. But also more importantly, what are the lessons that we learned and what can we improve upon and what can we add further down the line if we were to take this further and really develop it and deploy it across different hospitals, different systems, different clinics. And initially, we really wanted to make sure that we were taking items away and how to then apply them later in future projects. So the first conclusion that we were able to draw is, as you can see, we were able to successfully bring together multiple hospital data sources into a unified structure. And that's big, right? Hospitals have so much data and so many different things happening in them all at once. And allowing for one pane of glass to see all of those things with correct queries, right, allows for not only the executives over the hospitals, but their doctors themselves to see what they have done in a year, what they've done in a month or a quarter, and improve upon, and draw conclusions from where did we go right and where did we go wrong. And the use of that, and that brings us to our second point. All of these different designs and tables that we've created allows for, the executives to create powerful insights for operations and performance. We really wanted to make sure that this wasn't very revenue or profit oriented, considering it's a hospital and their job is to save lives, right? But that saving lives does come at a cost, and we got to make sure that we can keep those lights on. And improving operationally will do that. And obviously, improving from a financial perspective will allow us to expand and continue to build upon what this particular hospital is trying to accomplish. And some of those clinical operations takes us to our third point, which is automating those processes through stored procedures like Henry chatted about, and ETL flows to make everything more consistent, making sure that we're maintained properly, we're scalable, and there's always the risk of human error, and allowing some of these processes to be completed automatically reduces that. And that's very important for not just a hospital, but any organization in general. So the lessons learned to finish out, we will look to better plan out the relationships between, the fact and dimension tables early on, as that's something that we definitely could have seen ourselves run into having an issue with, and making sure that our schema design is very clean. Because if we go down the process of creating that and then not making the best flow for that, makes it really difficult for us to then later on clean up the mess that we've made. Something that Henry Parker and I also chatted about, we needed to make sure we were tracking outcomes to the patient. And the best way to explain this is tracking a baby to the parent, right? Like if a parent then has the outcome of having a baby, we want to make sure that that baby is pointed back to that patient correctly. Or in a different scenario, tracking the outcome to a patient, maybe what happened after this we prescribed this particular treatment, or we had them go through this round of chemotherapy, and we want to make sure that the outcomes are tied back to the patient and they're not floating out there for when there's sequential visits and follow-ups, that it's unknown to us on a database level what happened to that patient as the days, months, and years go by. And the last thing we wanted to do from lessons learned is building stored procedures and ETL flows. We need to make sure that the data formats consistency, make sure that there's no import errors, and making sure that it's accurate as well. And that's definitely from a conception point of view, that we need to make sure that those things are firing correctly from the outset. So really appreciate you listening in on our project as much as we enjoyed creating it, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you.